Biologist Mike Lorette is taking us to see the American crocodile at home in this network of canals.
Biologists here, they've been able to turn back the tide of the population from under 100 to thousands now, but it is a very fragile process.
They didn't migrate. They didn't die. They were removed. Deep in the Florida Everglades, the rulers of the swamp, massive battle-scarred crocodiles that had held their ground for decades.
Freshwater crocodiles. Warmed by the summer heat, they are at their most alert.
Began to vanish without a trace. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just empty basking sites and silent breeding grounds. The survivors started behaving wrong, attacking boats, fleeing from shadows, acting like prey instead of predators. But what could possibly be strong enough to drive the apex hunters from their own territory? Officials blamed snakes, human interference, or climate shifts. They were all wrong. What was hiding in the water was a deliberate apex predator, one responsible for hundreds of human deaths each year in its native range. It doesn't avoid people, it hunts them. And the most terrifying part? It had been breeding in Florida for years, rewriting the food chain and forcing authorities to consider the unthinkable. Designated man-eater zones, the native kings. To understand why this discovery sent shockwaves through the biology community, you first have to understand the battlefield. The Florida Everglades, the River of Grass, is a vast, slow-moving sheet of water.
Another feature of the young continent was wetlands. The Everglades was a vast, slow-moving river of grass,
stretching across sawgrass prairies and mangrove forests. It looks peaceful from the air, but beneath that surface, it's a constant war for survival where only the strongest and smartest get to rule. For millions of years, two legendary reptiles sat unchallenged at the top of this food chain. The first is the American alligator, a powerful, adaptable tank of a creature that dominates freshwater environments throughout the Southeast. Alligators are the enforcers of the swamp, commanding respect openly, thriving almost anywhere they find standing water. The second ruler is the American crocodile, a more elusive cousin that prefers the brackish waters where freshwater meets salt. While alligators are bold and territorial, American crocodiles are remarkably shy. If you're lucky enough to spot one in the wild, it will likely swim away from you. These creatures want nothing to do with people. Here's a statistic that might surprise you. In the entire recorded history of the United States, there has never been a single confirmed fatal attack by an American crocodile on a human being. Not one. These are large, powerful predators with serious bite force, yet they've coexisted with humans in South Florida without ever killing anyone. That's not luck, that's temperament. The American crocodile is genuinely docile toward people. For generations, alligators and crocodiles shared the Everglades peacefully. Alligators claimed the freshwater. Crocodiles stayed in the saltwater marshes and coastal mangroves. They respected invisible boundaries and avoided total warfare. It was a balanced nature spent millions of years perfecting. We knew their habits. We knew their temperaments. The system worked because every animal stayed in its lane. Then in 2009, rangers started noticing that the rules were being broken, and the kings of the swamp were suddenly looking over their shoulders. The first signs. The first warnings were easy to miss. Veteran airboat captains, people who knew every gator and croc in their territory by sight, started reporting strange things. The strongest American crocodiles, the dominant individuals that had held the best nesting spots for a decade or more, were gone. Not relocated to nearby areas, gone entirely. The prime basking spots these animals had fought for and defended were now abandoned. Something was causing apex predators to flee their own territory. And if an apex predator is running, the question becomes terrifyingly simple. What is it running from? Then came the discoveries that made biologists' blood run cold.
Wildlife biologists are looking for a once-endangered species that now inhabits this area surrounding the Turkey Point nuclear power plant.
Remains of crocodiles and alligators started turning up in canals and remote areas, places where they had no business dying. These weren't small juveniles picked off by opportunistic predators. These were the rulers of the Everglades, full-grown animals at the peak of their power. It looked like something was clearing the area with extreme and unnecessary violence. How these swamp kings were vanishing without a visible struggle was a question nobody could answer. The most unnerving change was the silence. For years, conservation efforts had successfully protected American crocodile breeding grounds. Remote estuaries that should have been teeming with juvenile crocodiles were now barren. Entire nurseries had been emptied. An entire generation of young crocodiles had simply vanished. The natural rulers of the environment had adopted flight behavior, and when something at the top of the food chain starts running away, the entire ecosystem feels the ripple effects. Adding to the confusion were increasingly aggressive encounters with people. Remember, the Native American crocodile is shy. Yet fishermen were suddenly reporting crocodiles snapping at their boats and chasing small watercraft. Animals that had always fled from humans were now showing predatory boldness. To biologists, these reports didn't add up. Something was bullying the apex predators out of their own home. Locals had a theory, and it involved Florida's most infamous invader, but they were looking in the wrong direction. The wrong suspect. When reports of missing and injured crocodiles started piling up, everyone suspected the Burmese python. These massive invasive snakes had already become the undisputed boogeyman of the Everglades. Pythons had wiped out local mammal populations, eating everything from raccoons to deer. Their numbers had exploded into the tens of thousands. So it seemed perfectly logical that these gigantic constrictors had finally grown bold enough to target crocodiles. The theory wasn't baseless. In 2005, a massive python tried to swallow a 6-foot alligator whole. The snake literally burst open trying to consume its rival, and the gruesome photographs made international headlines. As the python population expanded deeper into the mangrove forests,
Burmese pythons have done unprecedented damage to the ecosystem in South Florida.
the exact territory of the American crocodile, most people assumed this was simply the next stage of an ongoing turf war. The snakes had finally won. But the forensic evidence refused to cooperate. Biologists examining the remains quickly realized what they were seeing wasn't the work of a python. Pythons kill by constriction. They wrap around prey and squeeze until the victim suffocates. The missing crocodiles showed no signs of being crushed. No broken ribs, no compression injuries. Whatever was killing these reptiles was using a completely different method. Now that the prime suspect was eliminated, the uncertainty became deeply troubling. This killer could take down the kings of the swamp and wasn't afraid to leave a trail. If it wasn't the snakes squeezing the life out of the Everglades, what was it? The answer surfaced near Miami, hiding in plain sight, wearing a disguise that fooled almost everyone: the imposter. The turning point came when the University of Florida's herpetology team captured a young crocodile near a densely populated urban area, miles from any established American crocodile territory. The location alone was a major red flag. When the team got a good look at the animal, they felt an immediate sense that something was wrong. It was a perfect example of the uncanny valley effect. The animal looked almost right, but something about it was distinctly off. The snout was unusually broader and more robust than normal. The coloring was darker, an olive black instead of the familiar grayish-green of native species. But what concerned the researchers most was its behavior. For a young animal, it was wildly aggressive, displaying predatory boldness never seen even in fully grown native crocodiles. This creature didn't try to flee or hide, it attacked. The team wondered if they had captured some kind of mutant or a hybrid that had crossbred with an alligator. The only way to know for certain was DNA analysis, which meant months of anxious waiting. During this tense period, more reports of strange crocodiles flooded in. Researchers observed something terrifying about these mystery animals: They were growing an estimated 28% faster than native crocodiles and were far more aggressive at every life stage. Whatever this creature was, it wasn't just surviving in Florida's environment. It was thriving better than the natives ever had. When the DNA results finally arrived, they confirmed something far worse than anyone expected. The genetic profile didn't match the American crocodile. It wasn't a mutant. It wasn't an alligator hybrid. It was a perfect match for Crocodilus niloticus. The aggressive young crocodile pulled from a Miami canal was, without any doubt, a Nile crocodile. Africa's most notorious man-eater had somehow established itself in Florida, hiding in plain sight among its docile American cousins. The monster from across the ocean. To understand why this discovery triggered panic among wildlife officials, you need to understand the difference between what was being replaced and what was doing the replacing. The American crocodile has 0 recorded human fatalities in the United States. 0. The Nile crocodile is the exact opposite. Across its native Africa, this species kills an estimated 50 to 200 people every single year. This isn't a predator that occasionally attacks humans when startled or cornered. This is a predator whose hunting strategy specifically includes large mammals, and that category includes us. The physical statistics back up the terrifying reputation. Nile crocodiles can grow up to 18 feet in length and weigh over a ton. Their bite force is among the strongest in the entire animal kingdom, capable of crushing bone like dry branches. They're ambush hunters with patience measured in hours, waiting motionless until prey approaches the water's edge, then exploding into violence with shocking speed. The Native American crocodiles weren't dying from natural causes or environmental stress. They were being outcompeted, displaced, and quite possibly preyed upon by a cousin that was stronger, faster, and exponentially more aggressive. But the question burning through every researcher's mind was simple. How? How did an apex predator from 6,000 miles away suddenly appear and begin breeding in the Florida Everglades? These crocodiles obviously didn't swim across the Atlantic Ocean. The only logical explanation pointed directly at human activity, and in South Florida, that meant one thing: the exotic pet trade.
We watched it happen. Holly's zebra sold to the highest bidder, as well as some of his monkeys. Now, the exotic animal trade is big business here in Tennessee.
Florida has a massive, often unregulated black market for exotic animals. While Nile crocodiles are strictly illegal to possess without special high-security permits, reckless collectors treat these deadly predators like status symbols. A baby Nile crocodile might seem manageable, even cute, at 12 inches long, but these animals grow fast and never stop being dangerous. When that tiny pet becomes a 6-foot, then 10-foot, then 14-foot killing machine, owners face a choice: expensive proper containment or simply making the problem disappear. The breeding population. After genetic testing, researchers discovered something that made the situation dramatically worse. The captured Nile crocodiles were genetically identical. This wasn't a case of multiple separate releases from different sources. These animals all originated from the same small group of hatchlings, either escaped from a poorly secured facility or, more likely, intentionally released by an owner who couldn't handle them anymore. One person's criminal negligence had created the ultimate ecological threat. The genetic evidence proved these crocodiles weren't recent arrivals. A single release years earlier had successfully established a breeding population. These predators had been living in the Everglades for years, hiding in plain sight, successfully camouflaging among native crocodiles due to their similar yet subtly different appearance. They'd been growing, reproducing, and expanding their territory while everyone assumed the swamp's problems came from pythons. The fear wasn't just that they'd arrived, it was where they could spread next. The Everglades offer everything Nile crocodiles need to multiply: warm water, abundant prey, and endless hiding spots. But unlike American crocodiles, which are restricted to the warmest parts of South Florida, Nile crocodiles handle cold weather with surprising ease. Their native range in Africa includes regions that experience genuine winter temperatures. This means the invasion wouldn't stay contained in the southern tip of Florida. These predators could potentially expand their range northward, far beyond the tropical zone, into areas where millions more people live. The real monster. Taking a step back and examining the full timeline, a disturbing pattern emerges. The Nile crocodile isn't really the monster of this story. It's just a weapon. Almost every biological disaster in Florida has human fingerprints all over the crime scene. The Burmese python explosion happened because pet owners released snakes they couldn't handle. Green iguanas now overrun the state because people thought they'd make interesting pets. And now, one of Africa's deadliest predators is breeding in American waterways because someone decided owning a Nile crocodile was worth the risk. But the cruelty runs deeper than exotic pet releases. The Native American crocodile was already fighting a losing war long before its African cousin arrived. For decades, coastal mangroves, the natural habitat these animals depend on, have been bulldozed to make room for high-rise condos and luxury hotels. The natural water flow of the Everglades has been redirected to support agricultural demands, poisoning what remains with chemical runoff from sugar farms and urban development. The rulers of the swamp have been pushed into smaller and smaller corners, stressed and vulnerable. The tragic irony is that conservation efforts spent years trying to protect American crocodiles, slowly rebuilding their population from endangered status. Those efforts succeeded. The species recovered. But while we celebrated that victory, we were simultaneously destroying their habitat and weakening their ability to compete. Then we dropped a super predator directly into their territory. The American crocodile never stood a chance. The future we're facing. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, FWC, recently faced an alarming new reality. Nile crocodiles, some of the most formidable predators on the planet, had been spotted in the state's wetlands. These are not ordinary reptiles. Nile crocodiles are aggressive, opportunistic hunters, capable of taking down large mammals, and their presence in Florida represents a potential ecological and public safety disaster. In response, the FWC launched an immediate operation to capture the invaders before they could establish a breeding population. The team successfully removed 3 of the reptiles, but the operation also exposed a terrifying uncertainty. Nobody knows how many more are out there.
FWC is releasing details of a 2-year undercover investigation.
Every week, these predators remain free increases the likelihood that they will encounter one another, mate, and begin forming a self-sustaining population. Florida's Everglades, a vast network of swamps, marshes, and mangroves, provides the perfect environment for them. If that happens, the state will face a reality entirely different from anything residents have ever experienced. The rule book for Florida's wildlife would change forever. What is now a controlled, largely safe environment for humans would transform into a genuine danger zone, where the presence of an apex predator directly threatens people and native species alike. Currently, when visitors walk trails in the Everglades, they see signs warning about alligators. These warnings are mostly precautionary, designed to remind tourists not to feed the animals or approach too closely. For the most part, alligators that are not habituated to humans do not view people as prey. The rules governing human-crocodilian interactions are manageable based on decades of observation and behavior studies. But if Nile crocodiles establish permanent residence, those signs will no longer suffice. Instead, they would need to warn families about active man-eaters, predators that hunt large mammals, including humans, as part of their natural behavior. The Everglades would stop being a serene, beautiful wilderness preserve and become a location visitors enter at their own risk. The consequences of this change extend far beyond public safety. Florida's economy depends heavily on ecotourism. Each year, millions of people travel from around the world to kayak through mangroves, fish the backcountry, photograph wildlife, and explore the unique ecosystems of the state. A single well-publicized attack by a Nile crocodile could make national and international headlines, generating fear that could devastate the tourism industry. Hotels, tour operators, and small businesses reliant on ecotourism would face serious financial losses, and the local economy would take a direct hit. The state government would be forced to divert millions of dollars annually to track, capture, and manage these predators, money that would otherwise go toward protecting native wildlife and conserving endangered species. And that leads to the harshest reality of the solution. Unlike invasive plants or smaller non-native animals, Nile crocodiles cannot simply be trapped and relocated. Shipping a massive, dangerous predator back to Africa is logistically impossible and prohibitively expensive. Moreover, releasing them elsewhere merely shifts the problem rather than solving it. To protect human life, the FWC would be forced to implement a permanent eradication program.
The FWC says these rules are not only about animal welfare, but also public safety.
This would involve hunting and killing every Nile crocodile found, a task as bloody as it is grueling. Each capture would require specialized equipment, expert personnel, and strict safety protocols to prevent injury to humans. It would be a literal war on an apex predator, a species that evolved to dominate its environment, simply because humans were careless enough to allow it into Florida in the first place. The ecological impact is equally troubling. Introducing a new apex predator into the Everglades disrupts the delicate balance of an ecosystem already stressed by climate change, habitat loss, and invasive species. Nile crocodiles would compete with native alligators for food, potentially reducing populations of both. They would prey on native mammals, birds, and fish, destabilizing local food chains. Unlike other invasive species, which may spread gradually or have predictable effects, apex predators operate on a scale that can transform entire ecosystems within years. The presence of Nile crocodiles would trigger a cascade of ecological consequences, forcing scientists to intervene aggressively to prevent permanent damage. Beyond the ecological and economic factors lies a deeply human concern: safety. Nile crocodiles are infamous for their strength, speed, and aggression. Adults can reach lengths of over 16 feet and weigh more than 1,500 pounds. They possess powerful jaws capable of crushing bones, and they hunt with cunning intelligence. Unlike most native alligators, which generally avoid humans, Nile crocodiles have a documented history of attacking and killing people in their native ranges. Residents of Florida, particularly in areas near wetlands and rivers, would need to adjust to a new, terrifying reality in which walking, swimming, or even boating could become life-threatening. Families would have to weigh the risk of encountering a predator with their desire to enjoy the natural beauty of their own state. The introduction of Nile crocodiles is a cautionary tale about human responsibility. It reflects a broader pattern of ecological disruption caused by accidental or careless species introductions. While some invasive species can be managed over time, apex predators are far more dangerous. Humans must now confront the consequences of their actions and acknowledge that protecting natural environments involves not only conservation, but also vigilance against threats we inadvertently create. In the coming years, Florida faces a pivotal moment. Authorities must act decisively to prevent the establishment of a breeding population. This will require increased funding, constant monitoring, and public cooperation. It will demand difficult choices and a willingness to confront an uncomfortable truth. In order to preserve both human safety and the integrity of the Everglades, some animals, no matter how majestic or awe-inspiring, may need to be eradicated. The future of Florida's wetlands and the safety of the millions who live, work, and visit there hangs in the balance. If the state fails to act now, The Everglades could transform from a celebrated natural wonder into a predator's domain, where humans are no longer at the top of the food chain. The warning is clear, the clock is ticking, and the consequences of inaction are as stark as the jaws of the Nile crocodile itself. The swamps of the Everglades have gone quiet, but the silence is deceptive. Beneath the murky waters, beneath the tangled mangroves, the balance of this ancient ecosystem is being rewritten. And we are only beginning to understand the consequences. If one predator can cross continents, exploit human mistakes, and displace creatures that have ruled these waters for millennia, what else might be lurking, unseen, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? And if we ignore these warning signs, what price will the next generation pay for our choices? The story of the Everglades is far from over, and its next chapter will challenge everything we think we know about survival, control, and the cost of intervention. The question now is simple, yet chilling. Are we ready to face what's already here before it's too late?